I've been friends with Kristen for many years, so I know that some of these things, are patterns on or
Right.
off camera. But it did feel like kind of an exaggerated boom on camera, and I wanted to do on the show what I would do off camera or on camera. I wanted to be very authentic, and like in that moment, I needed a boundary with Kristen, and that's what I would have done if cameras were there or if they weren't.
I want to gab. Okay, today we're gabbing with Janet Caperna of The Valley. Janet has made a big impact for this first season of the show, and I'm very much looking forward to chatting with her about it. Janet, it's great to meet you. Thanks for doing this. How are you?
Meet you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Good. Well, first of all, congratulations on the birth of your son earlier at the beginning of this year. How have the first 5 months or so of parenthood been?
It's been crazy. I would say like the first 3 months were pure survival mode. It was like, forget about laundry, forget about cooking, forget about anything else. I'm just literally keeping this baby alive and trying to have produce as much milk as I can. That was like first 3 months. The most recently, he just turned 5 months this week. So the last two have actually started to be a little more fun, where we can like go out and do things. And
Right.
now that he can hold his head up on his own, I'm like, great, now we can explore the world together.
Right.
So
We've moved through that. Right. Exactly.
yeah, so we just did a mommy and me class, and yeah, we've been doing stuff out and about a little bit more, and it's been more fun the last 2 months. The first three were a lot.
Can you imagine potentially being a parent with cameras around next time?
Yes and no. I mean, I thought the same thing just being pregnant with cameras around. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? And so I think, the whole I think reason that our show has been successful is because it's real. It's about our real group of friends. This is, what we would have been doing all summer anyway last summer, is hanging out with each other. So having cameras there, yeah, it's strange at times, but I think as long as it stays true to a real group of friends and us, living our authentic lives, I think, you do kind of in a weird way forget that they're there.
Right. Totally. The other night you had Sheena's birthday, and that came at an interesting time for her because of the finale and kind of all the conversation around that. And she's kind of taking a hit a little bit on social media because of it. What did that impact the celebration at all, or how was that night for you guys all together?
We had a beautiful time. Scheana
Good.
was awesome to celebrate. Sheena's been such an amazing friend to me for 7 years now. I know she's going through it a little bit, and there's obviously a lot of changes in friendships and stuff, but that night was just to celebrate her. I know that everyone was invited, and I think, everybody tried to make it, but I think, now all of this has happened. I hope now it's like a healing journey for everybody.
Me too.
Because I love everybody in this situation. Katie, Ariana, Lala, Scheana, I adore all of them. So I just want to see everybody kind of get back to like a happier place.
I know. I literally feel that as somebody who's done interviews with them over the years. Like, and so as a friend to all of them, I can't even imagine how hard that might be.
It's tough, but honestly, I feel like they all still have a level of like love and respect for each other no matter
Yeah.
what. So right now it might be a little rough, but I think they'll get through it.
Yeah, yeah. So you've obviously because you've had a long-term friendship with a good amount of the people in this orbit, you've been adjacent to this for a long time. And this is your first year really being fully in it.
Yep.
And it's one of those things I think where people say a lot about like celebrities or people in the public eye, they knew what they were signing up for, or they knew what it was going to be like. Did you know what you were signing up for, and did you know what it was going to be like, or did that really differ from this experience you're having?
Yes and no. I mean, I say that like I got the best reality TV internship being friends with all of them for so many years, because you see what they go through, and you watch things film and you're there for stuff, and then you see how it
Yeah.
turns out on TV, and obviously they can't show hundreds of hours of stuff, so you see kind of how it's boiled down. And as much as I thought I was prepared for it, there's, I think, nothing that truly can prepare you for having your own
Yeah.
life there. I've always told, my friends, Scheana, everybody who's on it, like, oh, don't worry about like haters or trolls online. Like, they don't know you. And then, as soon as somebody says something mean about me, I'm like,
And
and,
it lives
I'm
rent free.
crying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, what would I tell myself? I would tell myself not to worry about it. So there are elements that are hard when you're sharing your life and, trusting it to be boiled down into a 40 something minute episode or an hour long episode. It's tough, but I really do believe like truth prevails always with this. And the best I can do is go in and be my authentic self and, let that
Yeah.
be captured. And, there's always, I think, speculation or rumors of things, but I really do think the truth comes out in the end.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So let's jump into the Valley and everything that's happening. You've drawn a pretty hard line in the sand with Kristen, basically. Like you didn't invite her to the hibachi dinner, you didn't show up to the self-defense class because she was going to be there, and then she's not invited on the baby moon.
Yep.
She didn't say, I guess, I mean, big picture, like what she said is more about Michelle and Jesse versus you. So, in your words, like, why are you closed off to that friendship as we're seeing it on the show?
Totally. I mean, pretty much the first, as you see it air, the first couple dinners we had all ended with people screaming at each other and
Yeah.
fighting. And it finally got boiled down to this, dinner at the Mondrian where, I'm not in the hallway, so I didn't really see it until we saw it air. But the words that were coming out of the hallway and the hearing of pushing and shoving and all of that, that's kind of where I was like, this is too much for me right now. I'm pregnant. I'm 7.5 months pregnant, I think, at that time. And that night, while all of this was happening, I kind of internalized it, and I just was like, just sit here and be calm. And like, I know Jason, you see him stand up, and I'm like, no, you're not going out there. You're
Yeah.
not involved in this. I need you right now. And to be honest, like that night, my stomach was like really hard, like while we were at that dinner. And I called my doctor later and I was like, hey, this thing happened, like, and she was like, you're having contractions. And that was first the sign to me that I was like, I have to protect my space more. And it wasn't about icing Kristen out or trying to make her feel a certain way or trying to hurt her. I love Kristen. I really think that she, can be a great friend in many ways, but this summer I wasn't seeing that. And I felt like she didn't really care to not cause me stress. Every dinner, it just felt like there were bombs being dropped and a lot of, maybe not truthful things being said. And I finally got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to have contractions and continue
Yeah.
putting myself in an environment where somebody, doesn't seem to care that I'm pregnant right now. I just felt like I want to surround myself with the friends who are being supportive. And Nia, Brittany, Jasmine, Michelle, all of them were constantly checking in on me, constantly offering support, the ones that were mothers were like, offering wisdom and all of that. And I really felt protected and supported by them. And so for a baby moon, I wanted to surround myself with those people and the
Hmm.
people that I felt safe around. And after all of these dinners that were just going completely awry, I just was like, I can't have another one of these.
Yeah.
And while Kristen maybe didn't, do anything, she did some things to me. She misconstrued my words and
Right.
announced
She did.
something I didn't ever think and wouldn't ever say. And I really didn't feel like there was accountability taken there and or that wouldn't happen again somehow. And her attacks on Michelle's my friend, and I
Hmm.
wanted to celebrate my baby moon with my friend Michelle, who's been really supportive and an amazing mother that I look up to. She's phenomenal with her daughter. So, when deciding who's going to come, it really was an easy decision that I wanted to be around my friends who were being supportive, and Kristen wasn't that at that moment.
Yeah.
So,
I think it all
um,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And when you mentioned those couple dinners that were where bombs were being dropped, and it was kind of the beginning of this new show, and Kristen kind of being back in the reality TV environment, do you attribute her acting that way to that, or like was there a distinct change from your eyes about how she was acting once the cameras went up, basically?
I felt like she was an exaggerated version of herself, or maybe instead of saying something calmly, she was saying it in a loud way. I've been friends with Kristen for many years, so I know that some of these things, are patterns on or
Right.
off camera. But it did feel like kind of an exaggerated boom on camera, and it just I wanted to do on the show what I would do off camera or on camera. I wanted to be very authentic and like in that moment, I needed a boundary with Kristen, and that's what I would have done if cameras were there or if they weren't.
Got
And
it.
so I wasn't just going to say, okay, if I wasn't pregnant, it would be a different story. I would say like I can handle a little more stress and a little bit more fire, and like I'm willing to get in with it a little bit more. But my pregnancy, like I'm sacrificing my body for something that's a greater good. I needed and wanted a full-term healthy pregnancy and child, and that was number one priority. And Kristen being included was lower on the list by a lot. By I was
Yeah.
gonna have a healthy baby, and if that meant not being around her and avoiding that stress, then that's what I had to do.
And figuring that out at a later date and kind of settling that later, right? Exactly. And so in this most recent episode, Janet, when she finds out that she's not invited, she calls you a third grader and a high schooler later on, and then Zack also has a really emotional reaction to not being included, and he says that like your pregnancy is being used to like scapegoat mean girl behavior, essentially. What was your reaction to their reaction and seeing all that?
Honestly, I was surprised that they even wanted to come. I think, if cameras weren't around, they wouldn't have cared as much. I don't think they would have at all. I think it was more about being in the group than it was about being on my baby moon. And you see them multiple times through these early episodes. I'm seeing it now. They didn't have nice things to say about me. I don't know why they wanted to come on my baby moon. Kristen ends the episode and calls me a fucking asshole. So I'm like, why do you even want to come on a trip with somebody who you think is of that? So I was kind of surprised that they cared so much. Like, I think if Kristen was planning a trip at that time, she wouldn't have invited me either.
Yeah,
She had a big launch party and didn't include me in that. So
right.
it's like, if we're taking space right now. So I think she should have known that. And yeah, it was a little bit strange to me, honestly, to be like, why are you guys so offended that you're not invited? You guys don't like me. Aren't you
You're right.
excited weekend not to have to see me? I just
It was a
I don't.
blessing from coming from you, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think, yeah. And, I
Yeah.
think Zach insinuated that I didn't invite him because he was single. That obviously had nothing to do with it. It's just, honestly, Zach and I hadn't, before my birthday of last year, we hadn't spoken in a couple years, and our
Oh,
friendship was not in a good place at all. There was a lot of stuff that had happened that I didn't want to be aligned with, and I didn't agree with. So we had taken a long time of not speaking and not being friends. And then, once we were going to be on a show together, we have a bunch of mutual friends. It became kind of harder to avoid each other. So when Zach's was like, Janet and I are so great, I don't know why I'm not invited, I kind of like, anybody who knows us really well was like,
that's
why did
not the
he say that?
truth.
That's so strange. We were in a better place than we had been in a long time. And, I was comfortable inviting him over to dinner and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And big things, but to go on an overnight trip and, be stuck in a house with people for multiple nights, Zach and I's friendship wasn't there. And yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't think, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because it's like, we again, you're being accused of being like basically a gossip and kind of stirring the pot. And you got sort of like that flashback edit
Yeah,
that I think probably could be applied to other people on the show as well. But that's what
totally.
that happened in this past episode. And I wonder if like if you think that some of the reaction to like the icing her out, which I know, especially in this interview, we're getting a lot more context around that. But like it's kind of being perceived as you trying to ice Kristen out. And I think that the audience, you're new to a lot of the audience, and Kristen is not. And it's sort of this
Right.
like I think a lot of people are rooting for Kristen. It's her big comeback on the show and all these things. Do you think about that and how it's sort of informing how people are taking what's happened on the show?
I think audience members don't like, and when people won't film with each other, they're perceiving
Yeah,
icing each other out, of course. And, if all I can say is it wasn't about Kristen. It wasn't about me icing her out or making her feel a certain way. I had to protect myself and my space there. And if Kristen would have been a friend to me this summer and would have been supportive of my pregnancy, checking in on me, you know, being a little bit more delicate with me. Like, it's not that I'm hiding behind my pregnancy. It's pregnancy is hard. You're carrying and making a life. So I wanted people around me that instead of saying, oh, you're using your pregnancy to be conniving or a mean girl, I wanted people who are like, we know that this is difficult and what can we do to support you and be kind to you during this time? Like,
Yeah.
body's going through a lot. My hormones are going through a lot. I really wanted to be surrounded by people that were being kind and not just to me, but to each other and that we're getting along. And Kristen wasn't that this summer, unfortunately. And Zack and I just weren't in a good place where, it made
Didn't make
sense.
sense.
I was just being authentic to what I would have done either way. And I didn't think about the audience and cameras. I just went out there, wanting to be my true self and surrounding people that wanted to see my pregnancy go to full term and see me become a mom and have a healthy child. And now I'm pretty certain that that is not what Kristen and Zack wanted.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think that totally makes sense. And I'm glad that you're not thinking about the audience or how it's being taken. But I think that if you're having at all of a hard time with like how people are perceiving you, I think just remind yourself of that because that is informing probably how people are taking
Yeah.
it, you know?
And I mean, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I care about being a good person and doing the right thing. And I hope that comes across more. I know I love the gossip scenes. I'm trying to just laugh off and take with a grain
Well,
of salt. I'm
it's
like,
part of the
oh,
deal. It's also
yeah,
part
I'm
of the
like,
deal.
I'm like, wait, in the next scene, then we see Jasmine talking to Brittany about stuff. And then, Kristen and Jasmine, then Brittany and I'm like, all right, well, everybody's guilty. Maybe it's funny to highlight
Yeah.
the pregnant girl running around doing it, but everybody's gossiping. It's part of the job too. You can't
Of
just say I
course.
have an opinion about anybody else. Like,
No,
I don't talk on that. It's like, no, if something's going on,
it's
we're
a
all,
prerequisite. It's a prerequisite to this job. So,
yeah.
going off that, I would love because like you were in Watch What Happens Live with Allie, which is a great episode, and you said that you would take responsibility for what you said about Michelle, not
Mhm.
what Kristen ascribed to what you said.
Yes.
But Andy didn't ask the distinction. So for you, is the distinction the Republican and the racist thing? Is that where it
So
kind of
I'm so happy to answer this actually. So the truth is Michelle, Brittany, and I had dinner one night long before cameras were in our lives, and we were talking about the don't say gay laws, which were a hot political topic at the moment. And Michelle said something that I kind of went, wait, that's not like I know Michelle really well. She's a very inclusive, loving, kind person. And something she said made me think she's misinformed or that she doesn't understand something completely. And I briefly explained it in the moment. And then, to be honest, I was pregnant and tired. They had had a couple martinis. I was like, this isn't the time to really get into this deeply.
right?
And later I was talking to Jasmine. Jasmine's a very good friend of mine. And we were talking about other stuff. And I said to her, I feel kind of strange. The other night we had this conversation at dinner and I feel uneasy about the way I handled it. I want to make sure that I'm being an ally to the LGBT community. It's very important to me. And I explained to her our conversation, what I said, and we were kind of hashing it out like, what was the appropriate response? This was not a malicious conversation of, let's paint Michelle in a negative light. I'm like, I don't think Michelle never said anything that was hateful. She said something that seemed a little bit ignorant to the topic. And I thought, I think she read a headline and maybe is a little bit confused. And I don't think that she would want this opinion, knowing who she is. I'm like, she's not homophobic. She's not any of these things. So I just wanted to find the right way to inform her about
Hmm.
this. And we spoke later again. She said, I'm really sorry. I don't follow politics. I read something and I said something. And I was like, it's water under the bridge. So then for time to pass, and later Kristen says, Janet thinks Michelle's racist. I mean, the reason
Also,
on that
like,
phone call with Michelle, she calls me and she's like, Kristen said that you think I'm racist. I immediately was like, I didn't equate that to this conversation I had with Jasmine months ago.
different topics. Yeah.
Far off. I was like, I've never once so that's why also gung ho to Michelle was like, that's complete BS. I've never thought that. I've never said that. And then later when somebody said, well, Kristen heard from Zack, who heard from Jasmine, who heard from you, that you said, and I was like, that's what we're talking about. I'm like, this is such a small thing that happened. And I think friends should be able to have these conversations,
Oh
especially when they're
yeah.
hot political topics. We should be able to say, have you ever thought about it this way? Or, and really like learn from each
In
other
a
and not
safe space with each other.
a safe space to learn and not to have it thrown on camera. Being a racist is one of the worst qualities or things that you could ever be.
Hmm.
To just blindly announce that without really fact checking or asking, like, why didn't Kristen come to me and say, do you think something negative about Michelle?
Hmm.
To sort of announce that and paint Michelle in a negative light and then attribute that to me as if I was trying to attack my friend. That really didn't sit well with me. I was like, I was trying to have a safe space conversation with my friend who turns out it was a misunderstanding. And, this is not something she's like doubling down on.
Right.
She recognized that, she was a little bit misinformed about something. And I thought just to throw that in her face in front of a bunch of people and cameras, without me there to defend myself, it was just another example also of Kristen kind of not treating me well when I'm pregnant. I was home with COVID and sick in bed. So to then get, thrown under the bus also and have the stress of that on top of everything was really hurtful and not fun. So,
I'd imagine so.
I will take accountability for the words. And like I said, like I have no problem like explaining this whole conversation in depth. I wish on Watch What Happens Live we had more time to get
Yeah, it's
into,
a short show. Yeah.
speed round, I feel like. But I have nothing to hide. And I tried to, as soon as I realized what had been taken and spun, I then, had the conversation with Jason, and in my interviews was very clear, like, this is what happened.
Hmm.
And Kristen turned it, literally, I mean, made a mountain out of not even a molehill. So what's smaller than a molehill? But
A kernel of sand, a grain of sand,
right.
right?
And then to be like, I'm just repeating it, like you started
Yeah.
it. I'm like, I didn't start anything. I had a respectful conversation with my friend who I care about. And I would never want to paint Michelle as any of these things because I don't think she is those things.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wanted Kristen to take accountability for her words and for saying that out loud. And I think the reason also at the Capri dinner that everyone was so frustrated is because we were getting a lot of I'm sorry, buts, or I'm sorry
Right.
for repeating. I'm like, you didn't repeat truthful information. You added a giant word and accusation on something that's not true. And we wanted to see her be like, I messed up, I'm sorry. And she just kind of kept doubling down, and it was really hard to move forward after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Jenna, we have time for one more question. And there's so many things to talk about with this show, honestly. It's like I feel like this could go on for an hour and a half. But there are a lot of, I think, almost like loose threads, I think, around this. It's like there's Michelle and Jesse and like everything that's happened with their relationship. There's Brittany and Jax. There's overlap with Vanderpump Rules. There's a lot of things. And, you know, word on the street is that there's no reunion happening. And so like I'm sort of like a proponent of like you guys should just jump back into filming and like just film it all and let us in that way. What's your mentality right now with all this kind of noise around the show that you're on and sort of I don't know, the future of some of these shows is like it's not in the balance, it's just sort of like it's unclear what it looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I would have loved to have a reunion. I think, I think it's mostly first season shows don't
Yeah,
always. So, it's kind of a toss up. I would have loved to, because like there's just so much that's happened. And I think it would be good to come together and kind of clear the air. If we do jump right back into filming, I haven't heard anything official, but I'm hopeful that we are going to get a second season since it has been so
knock on
popular,
wood.
resonated with people so much. So I would love to jump back in. It's going to be interesting to see how any resolution is made kind of without a reunion. A reunion to me
Totally.
is like a therapy session. So it'll be interesting since we're not, if we do jump right back in, kind of what that looks like.
I think the premiere should be the de facto reunion, season 2 premiere.
I would love it. I would love it.
Oh my God. Janet, thanks so much for taking the time today. It was great to chat with you. I like getting a lot more context around a lot of this stuff. So it really is helpful.
No, thanks for giving me the platform to tell my side of things. I really appreciate
Of
it.
course. All right. Hopefully we chat again soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
I want to gab.